Hi, guys. Welcome back to another episode of the Chronic Chronicles, where we dive deep into the science behind chronic conditions and explore everything around chronic conditions, women's health, and healing. I'm your host, Lexi Halloran, and today we have Melissa, the founder of the Seed Cycle. She's here to share her journey and the incredible benefits of seed cycling for your hormonal health. Whether you're struggling with hormonal imbalances, looking for ways to support your cycle, or maybe just curious about this trending wellness practice, this episode is packed with valuable insights. Let's get started. I want to start out by maybe just having you share a little bit of your background and introducing yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Mel Kovacevic and my background is in functional nutrition. I am also an EFT practitioner, which we can talk about because lots of people don't know what EFT stands for, so we can get into that. But really what I want you to know about me is that I'm a huge believer in food as medicine and that our bodies have an innate intelligence, and all we need is the right environment, resources, tools, and we can adapt, heal, and thrive. And I've seen that over and over again with my clients and also the thousands of women that I have spoken to since I started the Seed Cycle.
I'm also really excited. So I don't think I've really heard of EFT tapping prior to meeting you. And now that we've talked, now that I know kind of what it is from you, I feel like I'm hearing it a lot more on social media. So how did you become interested in like functional nutrition and EFT tapping?
Yeah, so nutrition, I started studying like 15 years more, probably more now. And the only reason I started studying nutrition is because I was at war with my body, with food, and I had tried every single diet. I was in that diet binge cycle. I had a terrible relationship with food. I was always, my mission in life was to be skinny. Like that's all I thought about. That's all I wanted. And the more I dieted, the worse my health got, the
Yeah.
worse my mental health got, the more weight I put on. And so my thought process was, if I study it, then I'll learn how to lose weight. Like that was my only motive. So I started studying nutrition. And the first course I did was just like a basic course. And it was, calories and macros and some like, the kind of the basic stuff. And it was good. And my perspective did start to shift a little bit, but it was when I came across functional nutrition and EFT tapping and that combination that just changed my life. And so functional nutrition is based on the philosophy of vitalism. And that is what I explained about our bodies having innate intelligence. And when I had this huge aha moment when I was like, oh, so my body knows all these books I'm reading and the diets and the, the food plan list, my body knows better than them because I have this innate wisdom.
Yeah.
And then the other part of functional nutrition that was just so appealing to me was one of the first subjects was culture and traditions and its role in our food choices and nutrition. And I was like, yeah, because I come from a Croatian background. Food is how we celebrate. Food is how we pass on traditions. It's so much more than calorie in, calorie out, and what I was trying to live by.
Yeah.
And I spent so long going to family events, being like, "Don't look at the food, don't eat, don't eat, don't eat," and like then, it's just. And that when I realized, well, I can actually embrace this, and this is a beautiful thing, and food is a way of passing down traditions and celebrated, and we've done this throughout history. That was just so life-changing, and it reconnected me with my roots and again like trusting my body. So that's where it came from. EFT, so even though like my perspective shifted around food, I still had the food behaviors. I still had this thought
Right.
of I need to be skinny, I need to be skinny, I need to be
Yeah.
skinny.
It's kind of
uh,
hard to get out of that
I couldn't,
mentality.
yeah, I couldn't drown it out. Like no matter how much I studied, no matter how much like I loved nutrition, and that shifted. So this is where EFT came into it, and I was listening to a podcast, and this person was talking about how she used EFT to completely heal herself of her eating disorder, and she had this crazy
Wow.
story. And I was like, okay, I need to look into this. And so I just Googled EFT, came across the tapping solution, and they're incredible. They do incredible work for EFT. And I read like a one pager on how to do it, and I started doing it myself. It was like my little
Wow.
secret for years. And
Yeah.
it helped me so much. Whenever I had a food craving, whenever I felt guilty because I maybe overeaten, whenever I felt stressed, if I had a migraine, there was a period of time I was really constipated. And
Hmm.
like I would do tapping and I didn't know how it worked. I just knew it's something that really helped me. Uh,
Interesting. Can you say what EFT stands for really
yes,
quick
yes.
for people that don't know what it is?
Yeah, so it stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques.
Okay.
And yeah, it's also called tapping. And the way it works, and I only learned this when I became a practitioner. So this is how crazy it was. It was just like, it was something I taught myself how to do. I did it and it helped me. And then it was only when I decided to start my business where I was like, well, the two things that changed my life was EFT and functional nutrition. Let's combine
Hmm.
them. That's when I looked into like, oh, I wonder if you can become a practitioner. And I learned about this whole world and I went through a 2-year certification supervision
Hmm.
period and like there's trauma training and it's incredible. And this is where I learned the science behind it and how it works. And how it works is, so it's a combination of ancient Chinese acupressure and
Hmm.
modern psychology. And what we're doing is we're tapping on certain acupressure points on our face and our body. And when we do this, it sends a calming signal to our amygdala, which is the stress center. So
Hmm.
it's in essence, it's telling your body that you're safe.
Okay.
And the words are really important. So when we're using tapping, we're using a statement saying, even though I feel this way, so acknowledging how I'm
Hmm.
feeling, I deeply and completely accept myself.
Hmm.
And there's something so powerful, right? I think like there's so much like positive thinking and positive affirmations, but there's something so powerful in acknowledging this is how I feel. Like this is how I really
Yeah.
feel. Even though I feel really shit right now because I just ate all that chocolate and I promised myself I wouldn't, or whatever it was. I deeply and completely accept myself. And you're tapping on the
Hmm.
acupressure point as you're saying this. And it neutralizes that feeling. It helps you move through it. So um,
Interesting.
yeah, it's so beautiful. It's used by some of the world's leading trauma experts now. There is so much science behind it. Uh,
Hmm.
the last study I saw, and it could be even more now, was that it reduces cortisol by 43%.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna, that's a huge number, by the way, like a
Huge.
huge number. I'm definitely gonna have to research this and put some articles in the show notes for people that may have never heard of it before. And now, like, my brain is turning, and I'm wondering, like, for me, I have stage 4 endometriosis and I have chronic pain. And I'm like, in those really intense, painful periods when I'm having really bad cramps, I've tried to do some like breathing exercises to try to like get myself to remember to breathe because I'm just like in
Yeah.
so much pain. And I'm wondering if that tapping technique could maybe like help just bring me back into my body. So that'll be really interesting. I'm definitely gonna have to look more into that.
Yeah. Dr. Peter Stapleton, she's a psychologist in Australia at Bond University. She did a EFT pain trial not long ago. So we can
Ooh.
link to that study because I don't know the results off the top of my head, but I remember
Hmm.
it being really helpful. And for people who just want to get started or learn how to do it, the Tapping Solution app is really great because it's like a tapping meditation where it talks you through how to actually do it and you can have that experience for yourself. And then
Yeah.
there's so many practitioners worldwide now as well. And it's like, if you're using tapping like you in your example for if you're experiencing pain or if you're really
Hmm.
stressed or anxious about something, then that's such a powerful tool that you can use on your own. It can also be really helpful for trauma. And this is
Hmm.
where you want to work with a practitioner, someone who is trained. So it's like when you go to the gym, there's some things that you can do on your own, and there's some things that you need a PT to
Yeah.
to spot you.
Yeah. How do you think you can incorporate this tapping into like daily routines just for better health and well-being to reduce stress? So again, coming back to I have endo, so I feel like these things relate to me in that. But with endo, it's a whole body inflammatory disease. So
Mm.
if you have increased cortisol levels, you're increasing your inflammatory responses. So I've noticed if I have a really stressful day at work, then like a couple days later, I have a flare up because
Yeah.
I just have more stress, more inflammation. Um, yeah. So do you have any like ideas on how to kind of incorporate this just maybe into a daily routine? Do you have
Yeah.
a daily routine with it?
Yeah. It my routine. So I use EFT when shit hits the fan. So it's not like I sit in every morning and, do some tapping. But tapping is like I'm stressed out of my mind. The
Mm-hmm.
kids are just yelling and screaming. Yeah, like I've just opened my laptop and there's a million emails, or
Yeah.
I've got a massive headache, or I'm like, I've got a cold like I do now, and how am I going to get through the day? So anytime where I can feel that overwhelm, the stress, the cortisol rising, I'll start
Mm-hmm.
tapping. And
Okay.
so that's where it's so powerful, because you do that and you'll feel within a couple minutes, just tapping through the points, you'll feel that shift of going, and with tapping we always rate out of 10, like how intense is this feeling? 10, the worst it could possibly be.
Right.
1, not at all. If I'm tapping, it's usually a 9 or a 10. Sometimes I wish I could, like, I'm like, come on, you could have done this earlier and it would have helped. But that this is like, I'm just being honest, like it's a 9 or
Yeah.
a 10 by the time I'm like, okay, I need to do some tapping. I mean, not recommended, but I'll do it in the car, like still one hand on
Mm-hmm.
the wheel, one hand, but probably better to pull over. But that's when I can feel a lot of overwhelm, when I've dropped the kids at school and I'm like, oh my God, I don't know where to start. I've got so much happening. Or, if I'm somewhere, I'll just take myself away to the bathroom and just tap through the points, and I'll feel that cortisol reduce. And like they
Yeah.
say with EFT, like you want to try to get it to a 2 or below in terms of that scale. But I can feel that shift. And the thing that was really stressing me out, when I think about it, it feels more neutral. And then
Hmm.
I'm ready to kind of move on, and then I forget about it. And so, it's to the point where you're like, you forgot how bad it was, because you kind of just been able to get on with your day. And they call it the apex effect, like it's a real thing with EFT. And then like a few days
Interesting.
later, you'll be like, oh my God, that was so stressing me out. And like now
Mm-hmm.
it's a non-issue. And I did that tapping. I wonder if the tapping helped, maybe. But anyway, like amazing. So that's
Yeah.
my real life
Yeah. Real life
tapping
experiences with
experience.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very interesting. So I feel like you probably use that method quite a bit, like having kids and having your own business and doing all the
Yes.
things. So what kind of inspired you to start the seed cycle? How did you get
Yes.
there?
So this is the whole story. So I'd love to share it with you. I had this approach of functional nutrition and EFT, and I was priding myself on this holistic solution. And
Hmm.
in the beginning, it was great. Like people would say to me, "Oh my goodness, I've seen every dietitian and nutritionist in Canberra. No one's helped me like you have." Like my ego was loving
Hmm.
it. My clients were like really kicking goals. Like it was all great. But then I realized I had a couple of clients, or it was pretty much like every woman I was working with, maybe it was like 6 or 7 months in, that
Hmm.
their symptoms were related to their hormones. And, they would say, oh, I'm feeling a bit better, or I was doing really well, and then PMS hit, or
Yeah.
I had intense food cravings. My mood just like totally shifted. I had a client who was having like really bad acne flare-ups. I had a client who was on the pill but didn't want to be anymore. I had another client with going through perimenopause, and she felt like she was losing her mind.
Oh.
And I was like, all roads were leading, like pointing at hormones. At the time, hormones weren't sexy. Like gut health was really trendy. So I was like really into like microbiome. But I
Hmm.
was like, oh crap, I need to learn more about hormones, particularly the female sex hormones. And so that's what I did. I started researching, and wow, like I can't believe that I wasn't taught this before. Like as women,
Hmm.
our hormones operate completely differently to men. Men's hormones operate on a circadian rhythm, 24-hour cycles.
Hmm.
Our hormones operate on a 28-day cycle, and we have different nutrient requirements in each phase. We have different energy requirements. We have different even exercise requirements. And so I started looking at that, and then I started thinking there's got to be some food. And then I started to understand a hormone imbalance,
Hmm.
which can be a variety of things, but mainly what is seen is we have too much estrogen that's not being eliminated, and then we're not making enough progesterone, and that's causing a lot of the
Hmm.
symptoms. And so I started to look at estrogen and progesterone, and my thought process was there's got to be some foods we can add in to support the body to eliminate excess estrogen and help us produce more, because that's
Yeah.
really the root cause
That's
of
typically most women, well, maybe I shouldn't say most, a
yeah.
lot of women with endometriosis have
Mhm.
estrogen dominance and like a slight resistance to progesterone. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And
yeah,
the stats are now 90% of women struggle with hormone imbalance.
that's crazy.
Crazy. And 5% of men.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's a massive issue.
Hmm.
I came across seed cycling
Hmm.
and it really ticked off all the boxes. The first article I read was by Dr. Jolene Brighton. She's a hormone specialist in the US, and she was in this article talking about how she prescribes seed cycling to help women get off the pill, to help
Oh.
with that imbalance. So within in her practice, she was prescribing it to help with the hormone imbalance, to help with perimenopause symptoms, all the things that I had my clients that were struggling with. And she went into the science of the individual seeds and their functions. And at the time, there wasn't research on seed cycling as a practice. There is now, but even the science on the individual seeds and their role in hormone balancing, hormone modulation was
Yeah.
really interesting to me. And I think the thing that really just made me excited was we're adding something in that's going to help. So
Hmm.
often with nutrition, it's like can't have dairy, can't have gluten, can't have refined sugar. Eggs are bad now too, and like everything's. And I understand like there are things that we may need to eliminate, but when we focus on that, it can really lead to that scarcity, and then put us in a negative space. Whereas when we focus on what foods we can have,
Hmm.
and they're going to support our health, that's just so powerful. And then the intuitive side of things, and cycling the seeds with your menstrual cycle again, I was just like, oh my goodness, yes, because back to that, like we have different nutrient requirements and our hormones need different nutrients at different times. So it was really exciting. I trialed it with my sister-in-law. She had just gotten off the pill and she had really bad hormonal acne flare-ups, and within a couple of months her skin cleared up and her period returned, and we were like,
Wow.
"Ooh, this is cool." And then it was something I was teaching, and it kind of put me back on track. With my ego was happy again because everyone was getting to their goals, and I would teach women, you buy these 4 seeds, which I can teach everyone today, make sure they're certified organic, we grind them up. This is the
Hmm.
therapeutic dose, and this is when you take it. And for the clients that followed the protocol,
Hmm.
it ticked off the box. It was that missing puzzle piece. And we saw PMS symptoms reduce. They would say things like, oh my goodness, my period came, and like usually I would have all that pain and my mood,
Yeah.
but I didn't even realize it was coming, like the hormonal acne clear up. I had one client get pregnant really early on. She's like, do you think it was the seeds? And I'm like, I don't know, but cool. And now I know that with the nutrients in the seeds are supporting a healthy cycle, healthy ovulation, and then that's obviously
Yeah.
increasing your chances. So
That makes a lot of sense. So,
yeah.
what are the primary seeds that are used in this seed cycling?
Yes, so it's flaxseed and pumpkin seed, and that's in phase 1, so first half of your cycle. And then sesame and sunflower seeds are phase 2, and that's the second half of your cycle.
Okay.
So really easy.
And then just for anyone that may not have like heard about what phases are in your cycle, can you well, you don't have to give a whole explanation, but just like a brief
Yeah,
explanation.
I would love to.
What is phase one and phase two?
Yeah, so many of us were taught like or believed like me that
Hmm.
our menstrual cycle was just when you had your period, but it's
Yeah.
not. It's this whole there's actually 4 different phases over an average 28 days, but every cycle is different. We use the 28 days just as, like I said, an average or a guide. So
Hmm.
we have our follicular phase, which is the first half of our cycle, and within that
Hmm.
we have our menstrual phase, which is our bleed. So that's typically it is from day 1 to day 5, 6, sometimes 7. And then in our second phase is our luteal phase. And then from day 14 to 15, that's our ovulation phase. And so in the first phase, what we're trying to do is really support that rise in estrogen, and also helping the body eliminate any excess estrogen. And then that's setting us up for healthy progesterone levels in our second phase of our cycle.
Beautiful. Recently on social, well, maybe not recently, like the last 5 years, couple years on social media, the phases of your menstrual cycle have been talked about a lot more. So I think that that's really interesting. I think it's kind of crazy that I didn't even find out that there were 4 different areas of my cycle until I was literally teaching it in grad school to people.
Yeah.
I was like, how I'm teaching physiology and I never learned that in undergrad for myself. But when I was in grad school, I was teaching physiology and I had to obviously learn it to teach it. And I was like, what? Like, I didn't even know that these things were going on in my own body. So that it's just really crazy that we as women are not like given that information. Why isn't that a part of sex ed when you're
Oh,
younger?
it's
That's crazy.
crazy. Yeah, and I think it is like it's really Elisa Vitti who wrote the book In the Flow, and some of these other
Hmm.
incredible hormone experts that are leading the way and putting words and language. So Elisa talks about our hormones being on an infradian rhythm, and again, like another word that I've never heard of. And so she talks about the
Hmm.
circadian rhythm, which we've all heard of,
Hmm.
and their men's hormones operating on that. So up until recently, we didn't even have the language
Hmm.
to
Yeah.
to explain how our cycles,
Yeah.
yeah, are. It's yeah,
It's I know. So you're doing great work for sure, informing people about this. So the primary seeds are, you said flaxseed and pumpkin seed, right? And then,
yes.
so what do each of those seeds play a specific role in the hormone balance, or do they kind of both do the same thing?
Yeah, so this I love talking about this. And so the way seed cycling works and the power of it is in the nutrients in the seeds. The first part is that it comes from nature and our bodies recognize the nutrients. And I'm not anti-supplements,
Mm-hmm.
but people will say, why does seed cycling work so well? I don't get it. It's so simple. They're just seeds. I already had them in my pantry. And it's like, it's really like remembering that Mother Nature is really, really clever. And our bodies have not evolved to be able to utilize a lot of the man-made
Hmm.
things that are out there.
Yeah.
So that's really important. And then when we're looking at some of the superstar nutrients in the first phase, we have omega-3s. So one scoop, which is the therapeutic dose, or 1 tablespoon of each, ground
Hmm.
up, gives you your daily recommended dose of omega-3s. It's got zinc, magnesium, lignans, which are a form of phytoestrogen. And so lignans are just so clever the way they work within our bodies. So we have estrogen receptor cells all over our bodies. And when we're having that lignan, it acts as a plug and it tells that receptor what to do, whether it's block the production or create more.
Hmm.
And so that's really what the nutrients in that first phase are doing. Iron as well. Pumpkin seeds are a great source of iron. And then
Yeah.
in our second phase, sunflower seeds are really high in vitamin E. And this is important for progesterone production, but also that this is where, so within the first month of seed cycling,
Hmm.
most people will say, oh my goodness, my skin feels so bright. I didn't have any breakouts. It feels really glowy, and my
Hmm.
digestion feels really good. The seeds are a really good source of fiber. Again, that's helping you go to the bathroom more regularly, eliminate that excess, the toxins and excess hormones, but also that vitamin E with the skin. And this is where, yeah, that I just love that. And then it's also really good source of selenium, more omegas. And so this is how, in terms of the nutrients, are supporting those two hormones. I'll often get asked by people, well, can I just have all 4 seeds every day? Like, isn't that easier? And I'll say, yeah, that's great. Like, what a great nutrient source. But there is something so powerful about drawing on ancient wisdom and also what we know about our menstrual cycles and then the modern science, and cycling the seeds helps you tune in with your menstrual cycle, which is giving you that body literacy, which we spoke about, we weren't taught about. To seed cycle, you need to understand your cycle. You need to understand signs of ovulation because you switch at ovulation. So, this, I always encourage people to, even though it's a bit more complex and it might be easier to just add the seeds in, to practice the seed cycling. And this is where the research is as well. It is that practice of the seed cycling. So, for women who don't have a regular menstrual cycle, who maybe are on the
Yeah.
pill, perimenopause, don't know where they're at in their cycle, they can seed cycle with the phases of the moon. And so I
Hmm.
think this is where seed cycling kind of got put in the woo-woo world because it's like, oh, as soon as I mention like the full moon, people freak out and like back away from me and like, I don't know if this is for me. And I'm like, just wait. I want to explain. And, I'll say like women throughout history have used the moon to regulate their cycles to support fertility. We all used to bleed together on a new moon and ovulate on a full moon. And not to say that that's what we should be doing now. We live very differently, but we can
Hmm.
use some of that wisdom. And it's no coincidence that the moon phases and a menstrual cycle are the exact same time length. So
Yeah.
what we're doing is using the moon to mimic a regular menstrual cycle. And most of the clients I was working with, and a lot of our customers start with the moon because they're in those boxes of irregular cycles,
Yeah.
PCOS, endo, where their cycles are all over the place. And so what we find within 3 months, we'll notice that their cycle becomes more regular. And I'll
Okay.
always say, give it another, even if you notice it's regular, give it another month with the moon. Just keep cycling that way. And then when you've got at least 2, 3 months of like regular around that 28-day mark, noticing your symptoms reduce, then you can switch and seed cycle with your own cycle. So day one of bleed, phase one,
Hmm.
ovulation, phase two.
So, okay. So I fall into that bucket. Like I have
Yeah.
no idea when my cycle, it's very confusing and I've always had really irregular ones. Sometimes I don't really bleed anymore. I have an IUD now, so that one of my symptoms with endo was like extremely heavy bleeding and it would last for like sometimes it would last for 2 weeks. Sometimes it
Yeah.
would not happen for a couple months. Like it was very irregular. So the IUD has taken away some of that heavy bleeding, which is helpful, but also kind of leaves me in the dark. Like I don't know when I have other symptoms, but another one of my symptoms with endo is cramping. And I don't know if it's actually when I'm on my cycle or not because I could be cramping for like 15 days in a row. And I'm like, am I really on my period for 15 days? Like that's so confusing. So for
Yeah.
somebody like me, how would you suggest starting with the moon? Like when would day
Yeah.
one even be?
Yeah. So day one is from a new moon, and
Hmm.
then day two is phase two is from a full moon.
Okay.
And our bodies want that cycle. It wants
Hmm.
that rhythm. So there's something so powerful in mimicking that rhythm with the moon. And like women will say to me, "Oh, Mel, I was all a bit, I wasn't sure about the moon, but I feel much more grounded.
Yeah.
I'm noticing the symptoms reduced." And so for you, you would be treating like when it's a new moon, you would be treating that as your menstrual phase. So,
Okay.
you could practice those things around the self-care in your menstrual phase, turning inwards. You can set goals because
Hmm.
it's a really nice time to set goals. And then after the new moon, you move into your follicular phase. So that's where you might have a bit more energy and you can just notice if it's lining up. And I've noticed that women will say as they start seed cycling with the moon, they notice that they feel like they're moving through those phases, even though they might not have that physical bleed.
Yeah.
And then a full moon for you is ovulation. So this is where we can feel sparkly and bright and articulate, and we might want to socialize. And so that's
Yeah.
when you would be switching to phase two, and then moving into our luteal phase as we go through phase two. And that's where, again, you might want to turn a little bit more inwards. You might
Hmm.
have a little bit less energy. You might find that your exercise changes, your nutrition changes a little bit. And so you can use that moon as your rhythm. Uh,
Hmm.
yeah. And
Yeah.
it's really beautiful.
I feel like that would be really helpful for PCOS as well, because I know that
Yeah.
PCOS has a lot of similar things to endometriosis in that sense. And I know for me, it can feel like just out of the blue. I'm like, why am I having symptoms right now? It just feels so out of the blue. So, and I don't really have like control over my body. So I feel like practicing this feels like you're taking a little bit more control of your life, really. Because you're like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm doing this and I'm following the moon and we're doing the seed cycling to try to like bring that back
Yeah.
into kind of like just bring you back into your body, which is a really nice feeling. I want to talk more about PCOS. I'm sure you've had a lot of success stories over the years. So do you have any success stories of anyone that you kind of want to share that you know with PCOS?
Yes. And so there's firstly, I'd love to share the PCOS study. So this
Yeah.
was done in 2000, and we can link this in because it's a really good study to have a look at. So this was done in 2023, and it was 90 women over 3 months. There was a seed cycling group, a control group, and a metformin group. And so metformin's a drug usually
Hmm.
used to treat PCOS symptoms, and there was ultrasounds and bloods done before and after. And what they saw is for the seed cycling group, there was a 36% reduction in cyst degeneration. So that's
Wow.
huge. There was an
Yeah.
increase in cysts. I think it might have been the control group. Then one of the groups saw an increase.
Okay.
I think it was like 11.2 or 11.5 kilo weight loss in the seed cycling group, huge
Wow.
amount. There
Yeah.
was also, with any new studies, there was a few gaps. Like there was a portion control diet that went with it. And like that diet could have been better,
Hmm.
more protein and that sort of thing. But,
Yeah.
even the fact that we saw that there is science in a study like this. The other great thing about there was no external grants or funding. So really good in terms of that. There was also improvement in FSH, LH, and prolactin as well. So really, really positive. It's been great because it's given us something tangible in terms of like what we're seeing with clients and customers. We
Yeah.
also we work with, it's over 150 now, naturopaths, nutritionists,
That's
fertility
amazing.
coaches, and so we get a lot of feedback from them, and like it's just such a perfect fit because they're like me. They're like, oh, I was teaching my clients how to seed cycle, but this is so much easier because they were having those same blocks of clients being like, it's all too hard.
Yeah.
So really great to be able to work with them, and we actually sponsor case studies because
Okay.
we're like, we don't want to, because I've heard of like there's an endo seed cycling study coming. I've heard different things, but we're like, oh, we can either just like sit and wait and hope that studies are done, or we can
Hmm.
do our own work. So those case studies, we have them available to the public, and it's really great to have some of that
Yeah.
building our own kind of data around that. But the messages I get are just like it's so overwhelming. Like I'll regularly get like a positive pregnancy test photo or an
Oh,
ultrasound photo. People like, I'm pregnant. The seeds help me so much. And then
yeah.
a lot of the feedback is, like I was saying, the skin. Then also a common thing people will say is, oh, I didn't even know my period was coming this month. And so going from like the
Hmm.
dread and then the mood changes and then the pain and the cramps. PCOS and endo in particular, it really is those, what we're seeing is that balancing out of estrogen and progesterone, and then that's having a flow on effect. I saw someone recently who she said I could share, I won't give her name, but she said I could share
Hmm.
this story. So I did a workshop and she was one of the participants, and she said to me, she said to the whole group, I really want to try seed cycling, but I started working with this endo specialist, and um, they said that if I want to work with, they were really hard to get into, and they said if I want to work with them, I cannot do anything else. I have to stick to their plan, and I cannot implement anything else. So I'm not going to be able to do seed cycling.
Yeah.
Um, and there was some feedback from the group of like, oh, well, that's a bit
Hmm.
strange that that's the request, but
Hmm.
and then I saw her, maybe it was like 3 or 4 months later, and she said, I fired that doctor. I found a new one and I started seed cycling. And she's like, Mel, it's been incredible. She's like, my cycles are more regular. I've noticed such a big
Hmm.
shift. And so that was just so exciting to hear that, and being able to just her to find a doctor that she felt like she could. It
Hmm.
wasn't just like, here are my rules, you fit in, or
Yeah.
see you later. That I think that's part of the huge success story of hers, but then also being able to take her health into her own hands and make choices
Hmm.
of like, this
Hmm.
is what I want to try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really think that there's a bunch of important messages in that story, but
Yeah.
one of them is definitely for anyone that's listening, if a doctor is that like stringent on rules that you have if you don't have any control of your life and you can't talk to them about things that you want to do, then that's probably a red flag. that you
Yeah, it was just being
shouldn't yeah, you
shut
shouldn't
down,
be
you
with
know.
that doctor because I went through like similar experiences with one of my doctors. Like they literally told me they would not care for me anymore until I got on anti-anxiety medication because my anxiety was creating like pain flare-ups. Um, but in reality, like I didn't want to be on that medication, and I said that for a long time, and then it came to the point where they were just like, I won't treat you anymore unless you do this. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll find a new doctor.
Yeah, but that's really hard to do. You know, like I know for
Yeah.
myself, like, you know, I feel like I'm strong. I talk about all this stuff. I'm,
Hmm.
you know, like I run two businesses, like I'm on top of the world. I go in to see a doctor like recently because I had ringing in my ears.
Yeah.
And like just, you know, I just got into a GP that I could get into because I was like, oh, maybe I need a hearing test. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, some of the things that they said to me, I was just like, no. And like, I think like anti-anxiety medication came up and then something else. And then it was like
Hmm.
really, and I just felt like I couldn't speak up in that moment. I just
Hmm.
left in a daze. And I
Yeah.
was like, I can't believe I couldn't, like, at everything I do, and I couldn't even use my voice like in that
I
moment.
know.
It's so hard.
I know. I felt like that for a very long, like I had that doctor for years because
Yeah,
I was like, okay, like this is, I didn't know what to do. I mean, I like said no to the anxiety
yeah,
medications, but like you can only say no so many times before you feel like you can't say no anymore.
yeah.
So, yeah, I just definitely, anyone that's listening, if a doctor makes you feel like that, like there are more out there. There are. And there will
They
be
are,
somebody that will listen
exactly.
to you and that will, I don't know, help you through those situations. And if you are interested in doing something else, they can like tell you the benefits or not about that. Even if it's seed cycling and even if they may not understand the science behind it or know the science, they can give you advice on like yes or no type things. Like a good doctor
Absolutely.
will do that. So,
Absolutely. And we're having doctors, because of the science now, we're having doctors approach us. And so, you know, in on one hand, I hear the stories of women being gaslit and just, you know, horrible
mhm.
things. And then there's times I feel really hopeless about it. And then there's other times where I'll have a GP contact and be like, can you train my doctors on seed cycling? Can you have a fact sheet so I can give out to patients? And then it's just like, oh my God, yes. But my ringing my ears, I went to an acupuncturist and within
Yeah.
one session it was gone. Whereas that GP told me I have to live with it for life, that people commit suicide from it, like all these like the things that what they were
Oh my
saying,
God.
I was just like, what? Like
It's just so
left going, oh my
scary.
God, so you've just scared the crap out. And then one session of acupuncture and it's gone. So, you know,
Yeah, I acupuncture is definitely helpful. I'm supposed to start doing dry needling for my endo pain soon,
mm,
and we'll see how that goes. I
yeah,
feel like it'll be helpful. I read a couple papers about it and I was like, oh, this seems like
yeah.
people have had benefits from it. So,
And this is the thing as well, like it's never just one thing that's going to fix
mhm,
it. And
true.
like I'll have people say to me, "Oh, you know, I was seeing a naturopath and they've given me some herbs, but I've just come across seed cycling, so I think I'll stop the herbs and start seed cycling so then I can see what's working." And I'm like, "No, do both because the both is
Hmm.
probably going to be the combination that works for you." So seed cycling is an adjunct. It's an in combination with working with your specialist, with EFT, with
Hmm.
acupuncture or dry needling, with, you know, a whole lot of things. For my clients, it wasn't the one thing that we were doing. And even with our case studies, we get them to list the other things that they're doing with their clients because, you know, yeah, some of our customers just add seed cycling, and like my sister-in-law, like prime example, nothing else changed. We just added seed cycling in and incredible results. But for many of us, particularly when we're dealing with endo and PCOS, really painful periods,
Yeah.
fertility issues, it's going to be a whole combination. It's a whole team of people supporting you, and then add seed cycling in, and it might be that missing link.
Hmm. Well, I feel like that's a lot of the problems with, honestly, not to drag social media, but like that is a big issue with social media and weight loss, for example. Like you get on social media and people are like, do this one thing and you'll lose 20 pounds. But like
Mhm.
that's not how those things work. And it's the same thing with endometriosis and PCOS. Like those are complex diseases that affect your whole body in one way or another, like hormonal imbalances, inflammatory issues. So most of the time, yeah, like one thing is not going to be the end all be all. Those are not PCOS and endometriosis are technically not curable things. Like they're treatable and you can make your life better and you can make your symptoms less, but it's typically not going to be one thing. And I think that seed cycling is helpful. But yeah, it's in tandem with, you know, eating a healthier diet, anti-inflammatory things, and doing walking and like a host of other things that
Yeah.
people you may have found help your symptoms. So, are there any challenges that people come to you with when starting seed cycling?
You have to be consistent with it. So the
Okay.
number one thing that if I have someone who isn't seeing results or the benefits, they'll say, "Oh, I'm struggling to do it," and
Hmm.
it's like, "Oh, I can package it for you. I can send it to you. I can,
Yeah.
I
I
can give you
just
all the
can't.
resources, but you need to have it." So,
Yeah.
this is the other thing. Like, and like, back to social media. It's not a quick fix. Like, seed cycling is something you have to do consistently. You got to do it for at least 3 months. Yes, that first month you'll notice those changes, which then gives you the
Hmm.
motivation to keep doing it. But there. Like we are just after quick fixes. Actually, last night I did a tasting at a supplement store, and someone came in and said, "I need to lose weight. I want a fat burner." And I said, "Oh, how are your hormones?" And she goes, "Oh, they're a mess." And I said, "Well, you know that like my background's in nutrition, and most of the
Hmm.
time when I was working with women, we had a weight loss goal. But I realized that if we didn't address the underlying root cause of that hormone imbalance, it was like pushing shit uphill. Like the weight just wasn't
Yeah.
coming off."
Or if you lose it, it comes back
Yeah,
because
it's
then,
not.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because estrogen, when we have too much
Hmm.
estrogen, not enough progesterone, it just has that flow-on effect. And she goes, "Oh, how long does it take to work?" And I said, "Well, 3 months." "Oh, no, no, I need something quicker than that." And I was just like, that's a prime example of just, we just want it. We want it now. We want it quickly. We
Hmm.
want it easy. But it's a bit of a myth. And also, if you do like what I know with my own health, like if you do the work,
Hmm.
you put in the work with your nervous system, you put in the work with your health, then things just get better and better. And yeah, there are some months where my big struggles were my mood. Like I would get to the point where I'd feel like I need to be like locked in a padded room for a couple of days before I got my period. Like I was like, I am just so irritated. Like anyone around me is just gonna
Hmm.
get demolished. And also migraines. Like I'd be in bed or having to take
Oh,
painkillers for a migraine every month. And I just thought that was normal, part of being a woman. And it took months of seed cycling to the point where I was like, is it going to help my migraines? And it did. And now, like, it's never as bad as it was. If I am super stressed or things have been busy and I haven't been taking care of myself in my phases, it's like your period's like your monthly report card. Like they say, it's like your fifth vital sign. So it will show up. I'll get a bit more moody. I won't have a migraine, but I'll feel that kind of headache feeling, and then
hmm.
I know, okay, next month we got to do better. But it's never as bad as it was. Like lay the foundations, do that groundwork, and very similar. I see the similar thing with like weight and skin, and even like fluid retention and bloating pays off.
Yeah, I 1000% agree. Speaking more on that, do you have any tips for developing more of like an intuitive relationship with food? I don't know. I feel like that's also intuitive eating is kind of a hot topic right now as well on social media, but I feel like that is actually a good way to go about um food and nutrition. Like that's one of the good things that's coming out of talking about like diet culture and stuff on social media. So do you have any tips on that?
Yeah, I love talking about this. This is so exciting. The first thing is you gotta quit the diets. Like I made
Yeah.
a promise to myself. Promise, I'm never dieting again. I'm not
Hmm.
starting on Monday. And every now and then, I will like, a diet now is like wrapped up in like a wellness trend. So, like juicing and like detoxing and so
Mm-hmm.
every now and then like something will come up on social media. I'm like, oh, this looks interesting. And then I'm like, no, it's a diet. It's, anytime where you're like restricting and moving away from that intuition
Mm-hmm.
um, and your hunger and fullness cues, it's just not going to serve you. It just leads to really negative relationship with food and your body, and
Mm-hmm.
it starts that it can really start that diet binge restrict
Yeah.
cycle. So, that was number one for me. And then from there, it's so exciting. Like ask yourself, what do I feel like eating? What do
Mhm.
I feel like? That's
Yeah.
such a fun question. What do I feel like? And then honoring that, and like, I have like smarty pants people that will say, well, I feel like Macca's every day. And it's like, no, 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 that's different because our real intuition wants to honor our health.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, it's like that listening to your hunger and fullness
Mm-hmm.
cues and honoring that. For my clients, I always say like start with just one meal because most people can't eat mindfully. Like they're like, I'm a nurse, I have to eat on the run, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I have to eat while I'm in the car, I
Mm-hmm.
can't eat until lunchtime. And
Mm-hmm.
there's all these things, and it's like, okay, is there one meal that each day that you can sit, you can maybe light a candle or go and sit outside and really focus on that mindful eating, and then I'll say, yeah, okay, maybe I can do it with dinner,
Mm-hmm.
and then stick to that. And so dinner time comes, you set up your plate, you set up a really calm environment, you put your
Mm-hmm.
fork and knife down in between bites, you smell the food, you engage all your senses, like, it's so beautiful. And then from there I noticed that it's like once you relearn that skill, then it
Mm-hmm.
can flow into, and there's still going to be those meals that you probably, or those snacks where you're on the run and it's all hard, but that makes a huge difference.
I feel like for me, the biggest thing that I have been kind of reworking, I'm 26, and up until this point, I couldn't tell. Obviously, I know when I'm hungry, like I can feel
Yeah.
when I'm hungry, but it was always like I wasn't hungry and then like I was starving, like nauseous. I'm so hungry, I have to eat right now. And then I would like scarf down food and I would eat the entire plate because growing up, it was always like the clean plate club. Like I had
Mm.
to. I was always very, very small growing up, and I like honestly like I couldn't gain weight when I was a kid. Now my hormonal imbalance, I can't lose weight, but like that's a whole nother thing. So my mom would always say, like, I literally had to sit at the table until I finished my food, and that has been ingrained in me now as an adult. And I couldn't feel fullness cues. I was like, no, I have to keep eating. And I would eat so fast that I wouldn't even realize that I was full. Now, the past couple of months, I've been trying to really just like slow down when I'm eating. Cause I also kind of realized upon reading some things and like having some doctors, I'm seeing a naturopath right now. And she was like, you like I deal with a lot of bloating from endometriosis, and I told her that was a thing, and she was like, how fast do you eat your food? And I was like, I'm pretty quick. And she was like,
Yeah,
try like putting yeah, like what you said, like putting your utensil down between your
yeah,
bites, because then you're gonna like allow yourself to breathe. You're not realizing that you're like inhaling so much
yeah,
air when you're eating that quickly. So that can also cause bloating. And I'm like, never thought about that. That's interesting. So
yeah.
now I've noticed that I don't have to finish my whole plate. Like it can go back in the fridge if I'm full. So,
That's amazing. And this is where EFT can be so helpful because I'm so glad you brought that up. There can be beliefs and memories attached to our food behaviors
hmm
now. And so we can use EFT to neutralize those because,
hmm
a lot of this is unconscious. And it's
Yeah.
like, you're like, I'm eating, I want to eat mindfully, but then by the time I'm hungry and then that unconscious behavior kicks in and then you
Yeah.
finish and you're like, oh my God, I just scoffed that down. So the EFT can really help, I guess, release that from your unconscious mind. So
hmm
then you can be more present as well. So this is where like EFT is just so powerful in terms of that and like those underlying like we have belief that usually are given to us by our parents when we were younger around food as well, and how we should eat,
Yeah.
and so they can really how we're eating now. So yeah, EFT can be really helpful for that.
Yeah, I feel like that makes a lot of sense. That definitely could be very helpful. I also want to ask you, I know you post a lot. Well, actually, I don't know if you post it. You probably
Yeah,
have.
it's all me.
Your company posts a lot on
My
your
company is me and my husband. My kids help us take things to the post office, and I have an incredible nutritionist that works for us now as well. But it's funny because like there's this perception that we're bigger than we are. And like I don't know if that's good or bad. Like we have a
yeah.
1-300 number, but it's just like it goes to my mobile and I answer it. So I'm answering it like at school pickup. And they're like, oh, is this the seed cycle? I'm like, yes, hi, it's Mel.
That's actually hilarious. I love that though, because you guys are doing great. And but anyways, so you post on the social
Yes.
media page a lot of different recipes that you use with the seeds. Do you have I have a really big sweet tooth. Like I love desserts. Do you have like a go-to maybe like sweet desserty type recipe for the seeds?
Yeah, I've got so many. So I say, like, I never want someone to stop seed cycling because they got bored of it. And I'm also
Hmm.
really passionate about getting people back into the kitchen because there's something so beautiful about creating meals for ourselves and our families and
Hmm.
snacks and again, like living in that abundance. So my favorite sweet snacks are I've got a recipe for like seed cycle bliss balls, and also I've got this recipe for seed cycle snaps. So it's just like the seeds and then almond meal, and I use either honey or rice malt syrup, and yeah, that's it. And then you put it out down really thin and bake
Ooh.
it, and then you drizzle chocolate on top, and then you can cut it up, and they're like snaps.
Oh,
Yeah,
that
lots
sounds
of
really good.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then we have the biscuit and brownie mixes as well. So this has got the like the seeds in it in the therapeutic dose. And then you
Hmm.
can just add eggs and oil, or you can have, there's a vegan option as well, and you can bake that up for
Hmm.
your first half of your cycle, second half, pop it in the fridge, and then you have one each day. And then that's your like healthy snack plus your therapeutic dose of
Yeah.
seeds.
Those sound really good. Hmm. I'm excited to try those ones too. What are your future plans for the seed cycle? Do you have any new things coming out? I know that you just came out with the protein powder, and do you have chocolate and do you have two different flavors?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So we've just released seed cycling protein mixes. So we've got
Hmm.
phase one, which is our chocolate flow, and that's got the phase one seeds in it. And then phase two, which is cinnamon spiced radiance. And that's just been so exciting because honestly, like most of the proteins out there are made for men and they're too high in
Hmm.
protein. They're really poor sources of protein. I'm like so excited to bring something to women that is a cyclical practice that they can have
Hmm.
good quality protein because protein is so important for our hormones. And that could be like a
Yeah.
whole nother discussion.
Yeah.
Um, but really, like, I just, the products are there, but it's really spreading that message and hope that there are
Hmm.
natural ways that you can support your body, reminding people of food as medicine and their innate intelligence of their bodies.
Hmm.
And I want to do that as much as I can, spread the message as far as I can.
Yeah, the protein powder looks really good, and I'm so excited to try that. Like I said earlier, I've been looking for a protein powder because I've been on a smoothie kick recently, so super excited to do that. I feel like that's such an easy way to get that
Yeah.
in as well, because then you just make a smoothie and it's there. I wanted you to talk about your ingredients being organic really quick and like how
Oh,
you source them.
yes. So certified organic is really important,
Hmm.
particularly because another whole podcast, endocrine disrupting chemicals,
Yeah.
which disrupts estrogen, and they're often found on herbicides and pesticides on our food and nuts and seeds as well. So we source only certified organic ingredients. Ingredients are really important to me. It's really disappointing seeing products marketed as healthy, and
Hmm.
then you see vegetable oils, emulsifiers, colors, natural flavor, which no one really still
Hmm.
knows what a natural flavor actually is. Just absolute like rubbish. And then
Yeah.
there's always a couple ingredients in everything I pick up that
And there's red 40 in literally everything.
Oh,
So,
it's just, and so, like I am so proud to be like, in terms of like the health food and supplement industry, hey guys, like we can do better. Like you can make
mhm.
products without any of that in it and still have, a decent shelf life. They just may need to be kept in the fridge, which people are happy to do.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe there's not as much profit and whatever, and it's harder, but it's worth it. And so, I
Hmm.
was able to prove that with the bake mixes, which only have the seeds. I use almond meal, buckwheat flour, Rapadura sugar, which is the best sugar in my books. It's completely unrefined. It's got potassium, calcium, raw cacao, which is the best plant-based source of magnesium. And so, as well as sourcing those certified organic ingredients, I always look at how those ingredients came to be. So, with
Hmm.
the protein, we use hemp and inchi protein. And so, I'm investigating, well, how did they turn that into a protein? And so, for the
Okay.
hemp, all it is the seeds have been ground up. Perfect. That's what I don't want. I want,
Yeah.
people said, why didn't you use monk fruit? When I went through down the line of how actually monk fruit is made and chemically extracted, yeah, they say it's
Hmm.
natural, but I'm not happy with that process. I don't want a huge process. I want it to be as natural as possible. Like all we're
Yeah.
doing is grinding it down. So that's super important to me. I feel like I don't talk about that enough because I just feel like people know that about me, but they don't because it's just
Yeah.
so ingrained in me.
Well, especially, I know a lot of my listeners are from the United States, and
Mm.
we have a little bit more of a lax on some of our ingredients. Like a lot of things pass through that maybe they shouldn't.
Oh, that's
So,
Australia. It's Australia too.
yeah,
It's really bad.
it's really frustrating. And you go and you buy like the other day I was looking at protein like granola bars and
Mm.
all of these that are marketed as like these healthy brands, like it says on there, it's like organic, healthy, whatever it is. And then I look in the ingredients and there's 45 ingredients in it. And I'm like, why are there so many? Like, I don't even know what half of these things are. So I think in my books, simple is better. Like,
Yeah,
whatever the process is, and it's simple and you have like whole ingredients in it, makes me feel more confident that it actually is doing good things for my body too. Because even in the process of, like changing these ingredients so much, you're losing nutritional value in it. So, yeah, I
100%.
I definitely wanted to point out to everybody like how passionate you are about having organic ingredients.
Yes. I go on little rants on social. If you follow me on socials, I go on little rants when I'll find a product that I think is good, and then I'll look at the ingredients
Mhm.
and
Is there anything else you would like to say before we kind of finish up here?
I would just like to say a huge thank you to you. And
Oh, of course. Thank
it's
you.
such a beautiful opportunity to be on your podcast. I love chatting with you. Our missions align, and I love the way
Mhm.
that you're supporting women. So thank you.
Thank you. I think that you're amazing, and I think that what you're doing is so important. I'm so excited to actually try the seeds, and I'll definitely have to make like a mini series like baking. So that'll be
Can't
really fun.
wait.
I'm gonna have to trick my boyfriend, trick him into eating healthy desserts he won't even know. He'll be like, "These are so
Oh,
good."
my favorite joke when we go out and do samplings, I'll wait till like a guy is like about to eat the brownie. I'm like, don't worry, you won't get your period. And they freak out. It's like
That's
my
really
favorite
funny.
thing. And they're like, what? And I'm like, I'm joking. It's fine. It's good for you too.
Where can people find more about seed cycling, the seed cycle, and connect with you online?
Yeah. So Instagram is the underscore seed underscore cycle.
Hmm.
Online on website is theseedcycle.au. We're on TikTok as well, Facebook, but I share a lot on Instagram. Yeah,
Okay,
I go
beautiful.
there.
Yeah, I'll link all of that in the show notes too, so people can just click on it if they're interested. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank
This was
you.
so fun. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Chronic Chronicles, and a huge, huge thank you to Melissa for sharing her expertise and personal story with us. If you found today's episode helpful, please leave us a review or rate. And and or share it with anyone who you might think benefit from learning about seed cycling. Please don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and follow us on social media at Chronic Chronicles Pod for more updates, resources, funny reels, relatable content, what have you. Also, Melissa has graciously shared a 15% off coupon code with us, so you can use code LEXY, LEXY 15, Lexi15 at checkout at theseedcycle.com.au. Until next time, take care.